Traveling intercity in America can be annoyingly expensive and complicated when you don't have access to a vehicle. Today I need to go to Eau Claire, Wisconsin, out that way. My daughter's first birthday is happening today out there. Megan and my daughter went out there yesterday, but I had to work last night, so I need to make my way out there somehow. I could take my van. It's the simplest option. It's only 90 miles. Wisconsin gas is a little cheaper than here in Minnesota, but the van doesn't have air conditioning and it needs some brake work. I can't take a train between the Twin Cities and Eau Claire. There are no flights that run between the two cities, so the other option would be an intercity bus. Greyhound does have 6 trips a day that run to Chicago and stop in Eau Claire, but the earliest bus I would be able to catch and still make it to the party at 1 p.m. would leave in just a little while from now at 6:45. And the cost of a rideshare service to get downtown between my town and Plymouth and there is over $40. That would double the price of the Greyhound or Flixbus fare. So I'm going to take the fourth option. I'm going to MSP Airport to catch the Groome transportation shuttle that runs between MSP and Eau Claire. There is so much wildfire smoke today, it is crazy. Usually I take Plymouth Metrolink Click Ride, the on-demand microtransit, to get to Ridgedale Center and then get a Metro Transit bus, but they let me down today. I tried to book the ride and it said this is a high demand time, and then it just gave me a list of the operating hours for the service. It's like passive aggressively telling me we don't have any drivers for you this morning. So I had to take a lift. Now, normally this Groome transportation shuttle service would be the cheapest way to go, but having to take that lift ride over here to the mall unfortunately rose it to within about $1 of Greyhound's fares. Which is unfortunate, but at least I still get the time off from driving on my day off. See, right away I'd bring up rideshare prices in the Twin Cities. The fact that that was $18 just for 5 minutes of driving, and the fact that going down to the Greyhound station this morning would have been upwards of $40 it seems very ridiculous, but if you're used to taking rideshares or taxis, that's just what you live with. For me, I'd rather just have that $3 minibus ride. The distance between the Twin Cities and Eau Claire is substantial at around 100 miles depending on your starting. In the modern era, that's a distance that has best been served by vehicles on the highway at about a 90-minute drive and totally doable without stop. Public transportation options to Eau Claire have been whittled down to Greyhound, Megabus, and our mode today, a shuttle service operated from MSP Airport by Groome Transportation, a provider with a national network of routes extending from major cities, mostly airports, to surrounding locales that for one reason or another are not heavily served by intercity public transportation. And now we're downtown a couple blocks over from the light rail, and we get the blue line to the airport. Whoa. Every time I'm on the light rail in Twin Cities anymore, the Green Line shut down for part of it, and it's maintenance this time on all the stations in Midway, and they honestly really need it. In planning this trip, I was ignoring Megabus on account of all the news this year about the company primarily concerning its demise. In reality, it would have been just as unlikely for me to get to downtown St. Paul to pick up the Megabus by public transit in time as it would have been additionally expensive to obtain a lift ride through both centers of the Twin Cities, just like it would be to get the Greyhound in Minneapolis. Oh, you're a little far away from home. Of course, I got here like an hour early, and I only had to be 15 minutes early. So after I use the restroom here in the rental car area, I think I'm going to go to the Caribou in the baggage area. Some background, there is a national soccer tournament going on in the north side of the metro this weekend here in the cities. I was experiencing it at my regular job, and I'm experiencing it now with all the people coming down from the rental cars. This is going to be a packed people mover over to the Lindbergh terminal. Probably won't be able to record anything, but it's just a people mover. So this is among one of the waiting areas I could use before I go up to the taxi stand, whatever it is. It does have power points. It has pretty decent looking seats. Yeah, you couldn't like get rest here, but you could get respite. And of course, all the things that I deal with on a daily basis at my regular job. It's a kind of retail gig. Juices, sugars and starches and meats and corns and, you know, things to sustain you. Yeah, that's what we're doing, a regional shuttle. And there's more restrooms and kind of daylight. I remember when they were digging all this out in the 1990s. My dad used to take a lot of flights out of here. It's just been kind of glazed and paneled over and retiled a bit here and there. A lot of TVs, more or less, just another place in the airport. And Greyhound is a flat-out option of total last resort for me. My van with no AC would have been much more pleasant than either the station or onboard experiences I've had riding the Hound. I never realized it, but there's so many pamphlets around the airport here. Groome offers around a dozen scheduled daily round trips from MSP Airport, picking up from a facility built onto the edge of the parking ramp at Terminal 1, just across the lanes for picking up passengers at the baggage claim. The pickup spot is accessible via Metro Transit bus, light rail on the Blue Line, or the Ground Transportation Center at Terminal 1. Well, we know where we have to be, but this is a little kind of basement-ish for me. Let's go get some coffee in the terminal. I figure if I drink my coffee at an average pace, we'll still have about 10 minutes down there waiting for the shuttle. Terminal 2 has a complimentary pickup location in essentially the same relative location, only that spot is not accessible by Metro Transit bus without a ride on the Blue Line LRT from Terminal 1. The landside caribou is down near the baggage claims. This kind of route really is the bread and butter kind of service offered by Groome, a major city's connection to its next smaller but significantly sized area of urban and suburban development. Most people don't take public transit between the Twin Cities and Eau Claire because driving is just a lot cheaper. It's one tank of gas to get you there and back, even if you drive around either city quite a bit. These public transportation options have been whittled down. There's just 6 Greyhound trips a day, and trains have been gone for many decades now. This shuttle service is rather expensive, but it's the only option with round-the-clock service throughout the day, even on the weekends. It's unfortunate there weren't more park-and rides I could have utilized, and I didn't have to use ride-sharing services, but that's just the way it happened today, unfortunately. This is the life when you don't have a vehicle. In the Twin Cities, the public transit is so sparse, you end up paying a lot more than a person with a vehicle would to go a relatively short distance. I guess we'll see what this shuttle's like. It has pretty good reviews on Reddit and Google, mostly from people in Eau Claire that need to get to the airport to take a flight, which makes sense. Groome does base some of their transportation marketing around tourist operations in the cities surrounding metro areas that it serves. They have 13 different airports that they work out of. And they do everything from coach buses to jitney minibuses to 11 passenger vans. So it'll be interesting to see which we get today. And it's a little bit longer than the Greyhound or Flixbus. It makes a couple extra stops, but I think that's part of the extra convenience of it. It is serving these western Wisconsin communities pretty well given the frequency, especially on the weekend, like I said. And if it's a nice ride and the tip I spent on the driver was worth it, then I'll probably say overall that, yeah, it's a good thing. It just ought to be supplemented with more affordable public transit, and that could come with just more frequency and more types of choices of modes the way to get there. Now you're supposed to check in with the driver at the desk 15 minutes before departure. Let's see if the driver's there. There does appear to be somebody down here, so let's see if we can check in. So there are drivers here. They might pulse out a couple of shuttles at a time, it looks like. So we just need to wait for them to call us for Eau Claire. We get on board. I can't tell what size of bus it's going to be, so that's still a surprise at this point. It's seems like the drivers help load on baggage. They call people while they're here and then escort them out to the bus. That's what you'd expect for like $66 a person. It's that per person cost that I think negates it for most people traveling as like a family. Like, would you spend, for some families, a couple $100 each way to go to the airport versus just driving yourselves in the car you already own? I mean, I get it. Primarily, this service got good reviews from folks living in the smaller cities that are catching flights. But Groome's marketing includes nods to expanding vacations beyond typical airport destinations. So they're trying to attract a wider share of the traveling public. But if you weren't aware of their services by looking them up specifically or in a general search for point A to B bus service or by seeing their vehicles while traveling an intercity route, you might not even know this service exists on the fringes of a packed bit of ground transportation providers in the Twin Cities and elsewhere in America. The Shuttle is on the comfier side of hotel-style shuttles with a modest capacity that wouldn't be anywhere near full today. A couple other passengers are seated ahead of me today, and I occupy a rear seat that isn't too disagreeably appointed but would likely not be conducive to sleeping for hours. Our driver throughout the entire process was professional and drove so effectively that I never questioned whether or not we'd get there on time. Just a bit of a quandary as to why we took the more local divided highway out to the Beltway Interstate 494. I believe he was trying to avoid congestion on the way through Egan, but the stoplights along the way on Highway 62 don't make up much time. Typically, this route offers additional drop-off points in Hudson, Baldwin, and Menominee, but with no passengers holding tickets for these towns, we'll be making a non-stop run out to the edge of Eau Claire on this Saturday afternoon. Why this route is best served by vehicles in the modern era mostly owes to the expense of instituting passenger rail along the corridor, as well as the nature of how the relationship between state-funded rail ventures and their private host railroads exists. The last passenger train to run between the Twin Cities and Eau Claire was well over 50 years ago. Revival of the former Chicago and Northwestern line, now owned by Union Pacific, would require significant investment to modernize signaling on the line and to increase train capacity over the local freight currently operating on this, a lower priority line than the CPKC and BNSF lines, running to the south along the Mississippi River, the former being the current route of Amtrak operations through Minnesota and Wisconsin. It's not that such a line is a bad idea, it's more that passenger rail is a more removed concept from the priorities of folks living in towns between MSP and Eau Claire. Personal vehicles came about as a more effectively convenient choice for the population here versus setting one schedule around a train in the modern era. A shuttle like this can operate on a much less expensive basis than a coach bus or heavy rail. It can also set a higher price point for entry to preserve a clientele that is looking for a convenient and comfortable option that takes the stress of driving the route away, while also providing access to the airport without additional connections via city centers. That is to say that the drawback of the service is likely the remote location of Groome's depot in Eau Claire. Situated on the far northwestern side of the city, technically outside the Eau Claire city limits, there are no public transit options to the city center or surrounding communities that don't involve getting picked up or walking an extremely long distance, much of which has little dedicated pedestrian infrastructure. All this speaks to the drive toward automotive infrastructure as the dominant choice for this route. Now don't get me wrong, I'd love to see a passenger rail option, or certainly more frequent coach bus service with better operators competing to serve Eau Claire and other nearby cities. But when most Midwesterners see a few hours time spent driving a personal vehicle, even in the often congested traffic conditions along the I-94 corridor, as the preferred option for getting around the region, it's clear that additional services would be a tough sell for transportation companies as being too little return on their potential investment in this corridor. State-sponsored services like WSDOT is proposing in the Chicago-Madison-Eau Claire rail service to complement the Borealis and Empire Builder have virtues in expanding accessibility across the region via Chicago and the Twin Cities, but that comes with the volatility of tying the public's tax dollars across the state to a corridor that only serves a few additional stations along this, a line which has not had established passenger rail for several generations. Folks out here are less likely to elect officials that want to spend their tax dollars on a train that completely bypasses them, just as much as they're unlikely to oppose a variety of transportation expansion programs of all forms that use their tax dollars to significantly alter the balance of small-town life versus access to the regions beyond. I mean, there's all kinds of stores everywhere nowadays. There's no need to create a lot of very long-distance routes for most people in these communities. A service that is frequent enough and includes enough various options for conveniently timed connections to all potential destinations is almost impossible given the plentiful network of roads and vehicles across this landscape. I doubt that it could happen, but I'd be delighted to see these concepts fused together in the future and get rail service expanded to Eau Claire and Madison as proposed. At the least, run more coach buses and raise the standards of such to offer somewhat higher capacity vehicles to generate more revenue for transportation providers or possibly the state, and a comfier as well as less stressful commuting experience for interurban travelers who aren't able to drive for one reason or the other. Clearly, Groome has their work cut out for them on this route. Sure, the initial portion of getting out to the airport added to the expense, but I was able to avoid the much higher cost of parking a vehicle in the city, having to return to pick it up later as well. The trade-off was a carefree experience that I hope this video complements for folks considering Groome transportation from the Twin Cities. Their other routes into Minnesota and Fargo look interesting as well. The cost certainly wasn't much higher than Greyhound, somewhat more higher than driving myself, but certainly more conveniently scheduled throughout the day than other bus services currently provide. That's of course if you can obtain a ride to your particular destination in town, as I did today. There was nothing at all wrong with that. You know, that was $66 of Shuttle, if you consider that the 5-minute ride to the mall at first was $20. So I'm gonna try to go get some lunch because when I get to the family's house, lunch isn't assured for a while till the party begins, and I'm a little more peckish right now, so we're gonna go take care of that. I don't think most people would count this street or road here as walkable, but I see pavement and I have sandals on, so that's my definition of walkable. We are not actually in Eau Claire. We are in the very edge of Eau Claire. And I'm gonna go somewhere where I can have somebody pick me up that doesn't seem so much like by the side of the road. See, there's a crosswalk up here. It's walkable, and it has a minor shoulder with some gravel in parts and sand in others. So, this is typical of ex-urban Wisconsin. It's like just as soon as you get out of town, it immediately turns into pretty much rural. There's a bit of walking in the street here though. Gutter, sidewalk, who knows? Let's go a quick trip over there. I would have had just about the same walk if I got off on Greyhound or Flixbus over there at McDonald's. Groome would be a good choice for an ever increasingly expensive set of lower capacity public transportation options between major cities and smaller ones like Eau Claire, with likewise considerable populations. I've seen a couple cool cars. It's not a total wash on the highway today. Yeah. So the city of Altoona was actually the really big railroad town between Eau Claire and Altoona, and they're not that far apart. We're talking right next to each other. So the station here in Altoona is still there, as we see, but Eau Claire has been long taken down, and there's some of the old warehouses that are still there, but not much really. Altoona still has a lot more of the railroad in its town than Eau Claire these days, but that could still turn around. Of the proposed expansions of the Borealis service, a train would run a round trip daily between the Twin Cities and Chicago via Eau Claire and Madison, or maybe just some part of that segment, depending on how the money works out at the state levels and the national. You don't know. People still want to just go by car out here, but what if your car was down for repair? What if you just didn't feel like driving? And I-94, as fast as it technically is for only 91 miles, is still a stressful ride. So I would like to have a different way to go, and the shuttle service kind of did that. But you know, with all the railroads still here, that big UP yard here in Altoona, and there's still plenty of space where a station could be constructed in Eau Claire, college in that town, and Altoona here still convenient to Eau Claire. Whatever you chose to do, there's still plenty of railroad out here that could be utilized for it. Heck, there's still plenty of capability for more bus service between the two cities, and that could be at a lower price than we have nowadays. Just easier for everybody overall.